sunny Parma. That's the kind of rugby you want to be seeing over there.
Hello and Kate Míle Fáilte to MudderRucker, the podcast all about Irish women's rugby. Join me, Ailbhe O'Nolan.
And me, Cian
as we bring you the latest on the Irish women's team, from squad selections to match analysis and everything in between. Each week we'll be joined by some of the biggest names in Irish women's rugby to get their insights, stories and behind-the-scenes perspectives on life at the top of the game.
If you enjoy the show, be sure to follow, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to grow. Now,
strap on your scrum cap, get stuck in, and let's talk Irish women's rugby. Welcome to episode 3 of MudderRucker, the podcast dedicated to Irish women's rugby. Joining us again is podcast regular and rugby savant, Chloe Pearse. Welcome, Chloe.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back again. So today we discuss round 2 of the Six Nations as France took on Scotland in La Rochelle. Wales hosted England in the Principality Stadium and Ireland faced Italy in Parma. Saturday saw 2 very dominant, well-drilled sides take on opposition that were probably quite under-resourced and under-supported. The result was a foregone conclusion, really, and a real window into how investment in the women's domestic game pays dividends, I think. On Sunday, on the other hand, Italy versus Ireland saw what should be 2 well-matched sides, but a very, very dominant Irish side. Chloe, we showed up in almost every facet of the game, I think.
Yeah, I thought 1 to 23 we were absolutely incredible. I thought we backed up the defensive effort that we had shown against France. We were incredible. We were they just never say die attitude. That defensive set at the end of the first half was one of the best defensive sets I've seen in a long time. I thought we were really good last week. But those tackles, bodies on the line, they're just relentless. The numbers that went up, Adele McMahon, 19 tackles, Nia Bodowd again, 14, we were incredible. And this week, the difference was we executed an attack and we were 8 tries to the good because of it. So it was an incredible game. The bench came on, made an impact. It really sets us up for England now and puts us in a great spot, and just buzzing after the performance today. It was incredible.
I'm interested to hear you talk about the bench so early on. I think previous Irish sides probably would have seen a bench come on and the side falter a little bit at times, players not really slotting in. I think the Irish side now have such strength and depth that we can take the likes of Ailbhe Wafer off, put on Brittany Hogan, and nothing drops. I saw Ailbhe Wafer had 16 carries. Hogan came on for her in the second half and made 10 of her own. This competition for the side is incredible. For you, what are the real key positions where we have that depth?
Yeah, I think the back row is definitely one of them. I would imagine Brittany was desperately disappointed to lose her starting spot from last weekend. And I'd have been disappointed for her, but, Adele McMahon then starts the game as captain. And Adele's a real defensive player. Anyone who knows her, she isn't known for her attacking prowess. She's known for her grittiness. She's known for her defence. And, I've always been in camp with her. And when the teams go out, if Tricky's not on your team, you're saying, oh, here we go, because she's just a nuisance. She messes up the rucks. She's that kind of player you want to be on your team in training, because she's going to wreak havoc. And she showed her worth in the starting jersey. But I think Brittany threw a real headache into Scott now. Part of me actually wonders, did Brittany and Dorothy Wall do such a good job off the bench that's where their impact comes now? It becomes that age-old thing that they had such incredible impact. Is that a super weapon for us to have? Or do they put it back to Scott that now he says to them, okay, if you start the next game, I need to see that impact from minute 1, because that's what they brought in abundance. Brittany with 10 carries. I thought herself and Doro in particular were just outstanding. I thought the energy they brought, the pace they brought onto the ball, they were incredible. For Doro's try, she makes the carry. Then they hit Brittany, and it was only on second watch and I realised it was Doro was carrying again after carrying the first one. But if you see the energy, she gets up off the ground, she flies around that corner. There was no one going to stop Dorothy scoring that try. She was incredible. I think those are 2 areas that were really starting to build depth in. Fiona Chute did a good job, I thought. She was a little bit quieter maybe, but I thought she probably did a lot of the dirty work that, sometimes goes a little bit unseen. And you still have Sam Monaghan to come back into second row. So we are really starting to build depth. I was delighted to see them give Niamh O'Dowd a rest, to be honest, and give Siobhan McCarthy 22 minutes. And at that stage as well, to leave Christy on and give her more game time. She has played a lot, but it's great to be in that position that we can now take Aoife Wafer off, take Linda off, take Niamh O'Dowd off, get the girls game time. And as you said, the standard never dropped. But we still, come World Cup, we can't play Linda and Niamh O'Dowd for 320 minutes of rugby. We have to start bringing in other players. I think that's always been our issue. And now we're finally doing that. And, they put their hands up today and showed Scott, I can do this. You can trust me. Put me on the pitch.
I think you made a great point about the Dorothy Wall try. It was proper front foot rugby, what we were talking about last week. We were probably a bit static against the French. We were taking the ball very flat. We weren't really getting up in the French D-line's face. I wonder if a bit of that was probably the French being up in our faces, and we were a little bit apprehensive about that. Cian, for you, what kind of a difference does that front foot ball make in attack? What kind of a platform does it give us?
Well, you could see today what difference that makes. As you said, against France, there was a lot of static ball. There were some passes which could have been better. There was a lot of unforced errors as a result as well. And that absolutely killed forward momentum. Today we had players taking the ball at speed and taking the ball effectively. The passes were good. The passes were great. They were taking the ball at speed and threatening that line every time and getting front foot ball, getting past that gain line. And once you can do that, you're tightening their defence. You're making space for other players. And the decision making as well of when to go out to the backs today was excellent. Choosing when to go for the hammer and when to go for the rapier, and it worked. Our tries, 8 tries, it's hard to argue with, but also they were across the board. They weren't just from one source as well, which is not only heartening but key going forward.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about our halfback's role in that. I think the decision making was really good, as you say, Cian. We were very effective at playing what was in front of us rather than playing kind of scripted rugby and just doing what we think we should do at this moment or this area of the pitch. We were playing what was in front of us. How crucial was Ailbhe Riley coming into the side? I think she offered us a lot of quick ball, flat passes, and was probably very hard to deal with from an Italian perspective, Chloe. What would you think that difference was from her?
Yeah, I thought her passing was crisp. It was everything was, I think I counted 1 or 2 that probably were not where they needed to be, but I thought it was a lot better than last week. We passed off the base a lot more. I think they made that change overall though, because when Emily Lane came on, she also passed off the base a little bit more than she had done previously. Now, Emily also had 2 incredible snipes, and she was unlucky actually not to score. So, she also had a point to prove after losing her jersey. Based off the 2 performances, I think Ailbhe is probably the 9 at the moment. Her passing was incredible. Dana had so much more time on the ball. She moved the ball well. I thought Dana had a great game. Aoife Dalton got player of the game. I thought Dana marshalled us really well. I thought she kicked really well when she needed to. Her kicking was much better today off the tee. She was 7 from 8. A lot of touchline conversions. Her kicking was superb. But the differences today, were quick. As Cian said, we had such front football. Our latching was exceptional. We were worried about the Italian threat at the breakdown. That was obviously something they targeted and we had identified because they didn't get a sniff today. So, the latchers did their job, the barrels did their job, and then it was on a plate for Ailbhe, who just served exceptional passes today, which allowed us to keep playing on top consistently. It was a joy to watch, sunny Parma. That's the kind of rugby you want to be seeing over there. So it was really, really good. And then you have speedsters out wide who, were lethal finishers today. They were incredible.
For me, a real difference in attack today as well. And I didn't hear her get a lot of mention by the comms or in any of the post-match stuff I've seen. Stacey Flood was absolutely key. She came into the back line a lot and she came in quite centrally, I think, as an extra playmaker. And I think that was incredibly effective. She's somebody that can put people through holes quite easily. What does that do in an attack, Chloe? When we're allowing the 15 to come into the line and give us that second playmaker, is that what kind of connects the backs better? Is that what was the difference today? Or do you think it was just a general cohesion and a better communication from all of the backs?
I think the backs actually just had a little bit more depth and structure today, bringing Stacey in. And it's funny because you see it in the men's game a lot, like Leinster do it a lot with Hugo Keenan. And then Ireland do it a lot with Hugo Keenan as well. And Munster similarly with Mike Haley, where they can come in and play that playmaker role, which relieves a little pressure from your 10 as well. They're not always the person having to make those decisions. So Stacey doing that was just brilliant. Like, she didn't do it last week, but she was out wide a lot last week, you know. But as you said, she came in a little bit more during the 15s. I just thought this week she squared up really well and attacked the line. I thought Dana attacked the line a lot more. Like, that try that Dana pulled back, that's something we haven't seen her do, where she actually brought the ball to the line. So she's then a genuine attacking option, and she pulled it back, and Stacey's square around the corner to put Anna McGann in, I just thought was exceptional. It would have been so easy for her to either give it too early, like just to ship it on, or just drift across the pitch. But now it all came from a really good line from Aoife Dalton. You know, she ran a really hard line, and it kind of tied in the Italians, and one of them jumps out, but Stacey then I just thought it was brilliant. That J line to square up, to give it on a plate to Anna McGann to dot down in the corner. It was brilliant. I was, not that I was, nervous about Stacey last week. I didn't think she had her best game last week, but today she really showed why she's, going to hold on to that 15 jersey, I think, for the series.
Yeah, I think Stacey Flood and Dana O'Brien were incredible in terms of their calmness on the ball today. They just seemed to have so much more time than realistically they probably did. They were just cool, calm and collected. And like you mentioned, that Anna McGann try, I think that was textbook. If I was to be coaching a young side of players, I'd be taking that as a perfect example of how to hold your defender and how to leave space for the winger. It was absolutely textbook. She recognised that she was running out of space. She hammered on the brakes and soft hands to McGann. I'd say McGann is delighted to get such a try, but she still had a lot of work to do, to be fair. And I think in attack, we probably went to the edge a lot more today and very effectively. And I think, we mentioned handling errors in previous games, and Cian, in particular, you were talking about those handling errors. We couldn't get to the edge against France nearly as effectively. Again, that hard French D-line was probably part of that. But those, cutting out those handling errors just unleashed our wings quite effectively. I'd like to talk about the defensive game a bit. You mentioned there, Chloe, towards the end of the first half, like you said, one of the best defensive sets we've ever done. Again, in the second half, kind of midway through the second half, we were under pressure a bit as well. But everybody on the line at all times, nobody gave in. A lot of double tackles, a lot of dominant tackles. Like you mentioned, Del McMahon, really, really great defensive game, 4 dominant tackles, top amount for the team. In terms, Cian, of defensive structure, what is effective in terms of defence and what could be improved?
Well, we saw a lot of really committed physicality in defence today. They were connected. There was good connectivity for the most part as well. And I'll touch on that a little bit later on as well. But in terms of dominant physicality, I mean, we were 13 dominant tackles to their 17, which is pretty decent. They're not a small Italian side. Del McMahon, Ruth Campbell, Nevo Dowd, ridiculous tackle numbers. And, that is part and parcel of the game. Even when you are running away in attack, you are going to have to defend for long periods of time. And those standouts in the 22 were outstanding. They were absolutely fantastic. Disciplined, patient, physical, just really highly effective as well. And then when we did get the turnovers, we cleared the lines. That's another change again from last week, which isn't quite deep, but it's very, very highly linked to it. On the other side of it, in the first half, we did see we were vulnerable to quick ball, and our pillar defence just wasn't covering them on the quick ball off of rucks, set pieces. We gave very easy yards up a couple of times, and it's hard to be critical of the performance today, but that is one thing that they're definitely going to have to look at, and it's good to have work-ons, and there definitely are. It's not a huge issue to fix, and I'm confident that they will, but definitely that's one to be looked at.
Yeah, you don't want to, I suppose, England is our next match in 2 weeks. You don't want to show them those little bits of weakness, because England will target those, and England will know exactly how to target those most effectively. Yeah, I think the pillars at times were probably just, a fraction too late to set and gave them that space. I think for the Italian try in the first half as well was quite interesting to see Stefan, break from the back of the scrum. She threw a dummy and she sold it so well, only to go over and score. That kind of thing, I think we should probably, back that inside player and make sure that we're shoring up those kind of holes. The second Italian try, I think, was a point of controversy. Chloe, what do you make of that? Legal?
To be honest, I actually thought both of their tries were illegal. I thought they broke early from the scrum. For the first try, I'm being really cynical here, but I thought Tunisia went early, which meant Adele went to go, then came back, and then Stefan broke, so she was a second behind. I thought it should have been looked at. I really did. Now, look, Adele will be disappointed not to have gotten off there, but I think Ailbhe has to stay on that until she knows Adele is going to make that tackle. And if it means we end up using the touchline, it means we end up using the touchline. But look, it's happened. It's something, it happened again as well later on in the game when Stefan did the exact same thing. And, it was Dana this time who had to identify she had two hands on the ball, So that'd be an area we definitely need to tighten up on. Second Italian try. I have never seen anything more controversial than from the TMO to award that. I don't care who was winning what game by how many points. I thought it was absolutely scandalous. I thought it was an atrocious decision. Even when we were winning by so much, it was so illegal. She uses her momentum over Enya, never regathers, gets on her feet. And then they said it wasn't a ruck. But regardless, she was tackled, which means she has to release the ball and get up. She cannot propel herself over the line. I was gobsmacked that the TMO and the referee both awarded it. I thought it was shocking, honestly. And I know we won by so much, but I was just so annoyed by it because it was absolutely, it was just deplorable that it was awarded. It drove me mad.
It did really feel like, I don't know, almost a pity try, but that's so undermining for referees for the TMO to come in like that. The referee's decision at the time was that it was no try. So in order to overturn that, Cian, it needs to be as clear as day, and she needs to have been up on her feet. She's lying on a player.
Look, this is what annoys me the most about it, actually, is that it was declared as on-field decision, not a try. To overrule that in any situation, it has to be clear and obvious. That's the wording in the law book. There is nothing clear and obvious about that. The most one-eyed Italian fan in the world could not look me in the eye and tell me that that was clear and obvious.
The only thing clear and obvious about it was that she was lying on the player. And, it was just so blatant. And I don't blame Rigoni. She's a fabulous player. Yeah. She's somebody who just looks for opportunity even when there isn't any. Yeah. And that was a prime example of it. I mean, if that's me and I know that the try line is literally just behind me, I'm going to do a somersault if needs be. But the referee and the TMO in particular just need to say, come on, no, not allowing that.
It's the player's job to try on anything and everything they can get away with. It's the ref and it's the referee team's job to say no when it's not allowed, when it's not allowable. I mean, how are you supposed to defend against that?
Impossible. Absolutely impossible.
That's how it's not fair.
I'd like to come back to talking about Ruth Campbell. We talked about her being, really effective in defence. I think she's probably somebody who's not getting a lot of mentions in the media. But she's such a young player. She's, is it 5 caps now? She's so effective. She's, nobody's questioning her position. She's getting that starting jersey every time. Her work rate is absolutely immense. Are you surprised, Chloe, by how effective she is?
No, not remotely. Not since she came on the scene last year with Leinster. She is a nuisance to play with. She's someone now who rubs people up the wrong way. I love it, but I hate it, that kind of way. But
you love it when she's in green, yeah?
Well, yeah, I love it when she's in green. When she's wearing blue, I absolutely hate it, but I'm not remotely surprised. I thought she actually would have got more time with WXV than she did, because and what I feel like they're actually underutilising her is her line-out work. Because having played against her in a club side and a provincial side, her line-out abilities are really good as well. So I was glad to see them actually use her in defence today because they didn't last week. And we used her once or twice in attack too. But I would definitely use her as an option more. She's an incredible line-out operator too. Maybe just a little bit, they don't want to put the pressure on her because she's a little bit younger in terms of giving her the calling or anything like that. But I definitely would use her. Her physicality is unmatched. She isn't as stocky and maybe as big as, Darrow and Fiona Chute and Sam Monaghan are. But for what she lacks in weight, she brings in sheer aggression. Her rucking numbers, while they're not openly in the stats, were through the roof last week. And I just think she is like a dog with a bone. And she is an incredible, work rate. Even in the Celtic Challenge, I thought she was superb in defence. She's just relentless. So I'm delighted to see her get an opportunity. She may stay in green now and away from blues and everything else that I won't have to deal with her ever again, hopefully. But no, I think it's great to see a young player like her get the backing. And I think she's done a super job. And I can't see why she won't hold on to that jersey for that England game.
She strikes me as somebody who has just an innate sense of confidence. She's somebody who just plays with her head up and is hungry for more. The Irish mindset as a whole, I think, is probably embodied by her. At no point today, while there were the odd error, there was a kick to touch, there were some passes that didn't go to hand, our mindset is so rock solid. Is that something that has been developed within the culture of the team more recently? Is that something that's built because we've had a successful 2024? Or, where does that come from?
I think it's a perfect storm, I think Scott has made that cultural change and, we've spoken about belief loads and how they are starting to believe now and then, they get a couple of performances that go their way starting last year in the Six Nations. And from there, they've just put brick by brick by brick, and by every brick they've put on, it's just been a brick of belief, I think the big test now is the England game. That mindset has to be the exact same. It has to be rock solid. And obviously, we lost against France, but we didn't falter. I'd love to see us bring it to England because we literally have nothing to lose. Nobody, regardless of where we're going. And look, maybe the chats in camp are different. I still think, England are going to win, right? I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I think England are just phenomenal at the moment. They showed that again this weekend, rotated most of the team and still hammered Wales by, a good bit. So, but I think, if we can put in a performance against England, it's something to be proud of. It sets us up really well then for the last two games to go and, get after that and try finish third. And hopefully someone does a job on France that allows us to pass them out. The killer for us was probably not getting a bonus point against France, I would say, the losing bonus, now that I think of it. But yeah, look, their mindset is fantastic. They're clearly enjoying it. You see smiles on faces. It looks like a great bunch to be involved in. And I think a lot of it is that those defensive efforts and when your body's on the line, that does connect you. When someone beside you is giving everything and their body's on the line, up, make a tackle, body on the line, up, make a tackle. That cohesiveness is just that builds trust in a group. And I think that's what they have. They have such trust and faith in each other in their systems that it's shown it's adding to that cultural piece. And it's just made them into such a tight unit. And that's what they look like. So regardless of a result against England, we need to take solace in those defensive efforts and stay that tight and stay that cohesive, regardless of what happens in the results.
Looking ahead to that game against England, last year, I thought going into the game that we'd at least spend 20 minutes playing really solid rugby against England and then fade off. And we didn't, we lost for 88 points to 10, which was just, an astonishingly disappointing score. I don't think we're heading into that. I asked you last episode, are England beatable? What are your thoughts now? Have they shifted having a look at our respective score against Italy?
I don't think so. I think we're closing the gap. But when I look at that England performance yesterday, it was outstanding. And the players they brought in, the caliber of leaving Mia Venner at home, and to put Ailbhe Dow on the wing. And then they said, we'll start Ellie Kildon, who scores a hat-trick. We'll swap out Scarrett, who, is one of the best players in the world. We'll play Meg Jones at 13, and then we'll play Tatiana Hurd. it's like the depth in their squad is incredible. And they still haven't even found their strongest, 15, 23. I think there's parts of their game like that teams have picked off. Like, Wales scored 2 tries. Italy last week did incredible to defend. But I just think they always will find a way. What makes me a little bit nervous about England, and it came from the game today, is our defence off set piece. I think we're so susceptible to line breaks. Italy made 2 really good line breaks in the first half off first phase. And to be honest, probably should have scored off both of them, but they didn't. I think England would score off them. I think they'd pick us off a little bit more. But then again, we have that never say die attitude. The girls, their scramble D was really good. 2 of those line breaks from the scrum that came on the left-hand side, Amy Lee makes the ground she made up to get across the pitch was outstanding. Her scramble defence was incredible. But I just worry that England are so clinical that they would score those tries. I don't think they're 78 points better than us, but I just don't know if we're quite there yet.
To look at that Wales-England game in the Principality, the first 10 minutes of that game was actually England on the back foot. Wales were particularly strong. England made some errors and Wales punished them for it. And I thought, we could be into a good game here. We might see Wales put up some sort of a performance. In the end, it ended 67-12. And what we saw after that first 10 minutes was that clinical nature that the England side have. They unlocked their defences. They outplayed them in every area of the game. And England, I don't know if it's that England are a very, very good side at reading games and fixing the game plan, or if it's that they're just so well drilled in every aspect of the game, they just make a call and they switch it. Are they playing a really reactive game of rugby, or are they playing a very structured brand of rugby?
I think they play a reactive rugby. I think they just play what's in front of them. I think their players' rugby knowledge is probably a step higher than what a lot of teams have. And I think that comes from experience. Obviously there is new caps in their squad and things, but the caliber of players they have that are making decisions, Abbie Ward is there calling the line out. They bring in Helena Rowland starts at 10 last week. Then they bring in Zoe Harrison, who runs the game incredibly well. That crossfield kick from her to Abbie Dow, how many of those have we seen where they just pick the right moment to do things? I think we spoke about 15s coming into the game. Ellie Kildunn has to be the best in the world at that, of timing her run into the line. I think Jess Breach is probably one of the most selfless players on that England side.
Mm-hmm.
She competes with Ellie Kildunn and Abbie Dow, and she just does the right thing all the time. She put the kick through for Ellie Kildunn's 3rd try. She probably could have scored one of Abbie Dow's tries, but that does the right thing. I think she's so selfless. They just have such variety in their game, England. Their power game is so strong. Their maul is so strong. Then they have backs who can score from anywhere. They had a real mix of tries as well between backs and forwards, showing that variety that they have. The only thing we probably didn't see was that big maul try. Usually you see Lark Atkin Davis get 3 tries when you see 67, so that was probably the only thing we didn't see. But we know they have that capability, right? So you have to be able to defend that too. But look, our defence is desperate defending. We just don't stop. So hopefully we live with it. We live with that power game. We put in those doubles and those triple tackles at times, and that scramble D of just never say die attitude, and then try get some turnovers, and hopefully then we can get Amy Lee on the ball and we can get Anna McGann on the ball, and we might be able to pose them some problems.
From a tactical point of view, going up against England in 2 weeks' time, is there any weaknesses to target, or what do you think the approach is going to be from an Irish side? How can we unlock them, or can we?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the kicking has to be as good as it was today. Dana found grass a lot today. It was, and then part of me late in the game thought, is this just really poor Italian positioning, or has she just, everything she kicked today? I know obviously there was 1 or 2 out in the full, but most of the time her and Stacey's kicks, they did find grass. We'll have to do that against England, because if we kick directly to the likes of Ellie Kildunn, the likes of Abbie Dow, it could be it will be that 88 if we don't find grass and get our connections in defence and build that green wall and have them run back at us, I don't think we'll change the game plan. I think we'll stick with it because he's going to try develop that. And if you throw it out the window just for England, what do we do the week after? I reckon we'll stay with it. But today we actually showed a lot of variety in the game plan. Like, I thought our decision making when we kicked was really good today. And then we played at times and we sweeped really well. And Ailbhe, got 2 passes from the forwards and got straight into that line. Like, that's what we're going to have to do, is just have that variety in our attack. If we're going to, play with England, we can't just carry hard. We can't just go out the back all the time. We need to have all options on at all times. And then hopefully we will score tries and hopefully we will put it up and we will get turnovers. But I think if I was to say, how do you unlock that England defence, I'd be sitting up in the HPC right now in an Irish coaching box, because I definitely don't know.
Looking at Wales, they lost 4 of their own lineouts and they missed 28 tackles. I think a lot of that is just how good England are at hitting the line. They're so effective. They're so strong. They've got, like you said, an enormous pack. I don't want to ever tackle the likes of Byrne. Not a hope. I'd rather tackle a truck. Do you think Wales fell off in the game a bit as they were just, ground down? Or do you think that, they just don't have what they need yet? Their pack is probably a little bit smaller. What can Wales do over the next season or two to try and become a more effective side?
Yeah, I think that Welsh team definitely needs a bit of depth in it, which is tough when you're going into a World Cup year and you're probably going to have to play your best team consistently over and over. But I think they just like that got tired, and then like space opened out wide. And, it is, as you said, you don't want to ever tackle Sarah Byrne. And then Maud Muir comes on, good luck. Good luck on that. And Hannah Botterman goes off or comes on when Matt Carson goes off. It's like a worse nightmare. They must be exhausted and soaking tackles. And eventually then it's like we said with the Ireland game, England are just playing on front football. You're constantly going backwards, then back, to the offside line. It is exhausting and it's relentless. And those spaces just opened up out wide. But like that, I think Wales are just lacking that depth in their squad versus what England were able to do in empty benches, but also swap half the team out from last week, and even looking at England, Ailbhe Burton gets her first cap after what is one of the most incredible and mad stories from previous, and she scores 2 tries. Another back row for the English team. That's fantastic. Great. For every other team in the league, what else did they need but another back row? So yeah, I think they just ground Wales down and Wales just ran out of absolute steam. But I'd imagine it was from exhaustion. They had played against Scotland and it was, a very tough game for them. So I'd say there was tired bodies, and a lot of their girls were also playing in PWR the week before. I'd say a lot of it was tired bodies.
I'd like to touch on that Ailbhe Burton piece, actually, because like you said, it's such an incredible story. She contracted a very rare brain disease, is my understanding of it, but she was initially misdiagnosed. She was actually sectioned because what they thought was going on was psychosis. And it turns out she was incredibly ill and was in a coma and had to learn how to walk and learn how to talk again. And then she's coming on and she's scoring 2 tries. It's just astonishing to see that somebody could come back from that. What a story. What a player. I have to say I was really, really delighted. And I know that she's in that position because England were down a back row. She probably wouldn't have had a chance to come in and do that, but I'm so glad to see her come on and score those 2 tries. I think it was a real big moment for the English team. And I have to say, as an Irish fan, England are likeable. And I don't want them to be likeable. And I don't want stories like Ailbhe Burton to really lift you up. But it's just phenomenal to see that they're a very, very good team and they're very easy to watch. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that Ailbhe Burton story. It's phenomenal. So looking at France-Scotland, again, I think we saw what was a very well-drilled side. The French they play what's in front of them. They're so creative. They're so responsive. And then the Scottish side that really struggle to handle them, really struggle to adapt. to the French style of play. I felt Scotland were probably just, almost paint by numbers rugby. It was so scripted and so structured, and they couldn't move from that. Chloe, when looking at that game, Bourdon Sansu is just phenomenal. She's such a playmaker for them, but she's not the only one. There's such creativity across that team. What was the standout for you from that French side? And do you think they're going to become better come World Cup time?
Yeah, I think it's her world and we're all just living in it. It's like a thing, isn't it? Like French just breed nines. If it wasn't Bourdon, it was her wife, Sansus. And if it's not them, you look at the men's side, you've Dupont, Legaric, and then Saran, who can't even get a look in, who's also an incredible nine. It's just what they do. But yeah, and even at that, the Menage twins were two sisters who were unbelievable and have been unbelievable for France. And obviously they're missing Roman at the moment. But now they have the Falau sisters, playing second row and 8, and they're incredible. One of them gets player of the match last week, and now the 8 gets player of the match this week. And I thought the two of them were just superb. Medusa Fall, she just never stops working. Her tackle count is through the roof. Esquardo as well in the back row is another great performer. And, I always thought Agatha Socha was the best two in the country by a mile for them. And then they swapped that this week and she plays a blinder. So, they're starting to add real competition. I think you're right in terms of Scotland were really scripted. And what was disappointing was when they actually changed the script and they put those little kicks in, they actually, they were much better. I thought Emma Orr was really unlucky not to score. And the one that she knocks on over the line, and then the camera is looking at the middle of the pitch the next minute. Sansus takes a goal line drop out herself, letters the ball up the pitch and wins them a line out 60 metres up. That's as a Scottish player, you're 5 metres out, you think we're going to get over. And next minute, a piece of magic from just a brilliant player and you're 60 metres back. That's soul destroying stuff where as a forward, you're looking at your boots and you're like, we have to go back down after all that work, I'm sure the backs think the same, but I just think of the poor forwards who have to, go back up the pitch. But yeah, France are definitely growing, when Menage comes back into that side as well. And they were down Vernier, and I thought the 12 who came in did a really, really good job. So I do think they're going to grow and they're going to get better. But they just switch off at times that, you wonder how that happens then, for a side who can be so clinical. Because I don't think Scotland did anything incredibly special, but they still were in the game for a little bit. So it's you just wonder what's going on with that French side that they can't stay focused for 80 minutes. But I think what would be frightening is if they did put in a full 80 minutes performance of what they can do, because they are a force to be reckoned with when they do. And now what they also have is an incredible kicking range. Bourgeois, her boot is incredible. She hasn't missed one yet, I don't think. She's really strong. So when you come, I suppose, as we've said, to a World Cup and you get to knockout stages, that's going to be really important. So, and she's keeping Emily Boulard out, who's probably started for them in the last 3 Six Nations in most of their games. So that'll tell you, the calibre of the player she is outside of the kicking. So I think they're only going to grow and get better as they go on through the tournament. Scotland then, they just, they have some incredible players like Helen Nenson, Lisa Thompson, Emma Orr, and if they can get Fran McGee on the ball as well and Chloe Raleigh, they just struggle to do that in parts. But they're still a really good side. I still think that's going to be a tough game for us over there. We'll have to be up for it like we were today, to be honest. But they're not something to be shirked off. I think they're going to be really tough when we play them at home in a couple of weeks.
How important is Bourdon Sansu to the French side? We look at her male equivalent in the likes of Dupont and, he's absolutely pivotal to everything French. Although in the Six Nations, he goes off injured against Ireland, ruptured ACL, and they're without him. And they make do. But I suppose, like you said, France just breeds nines and breeds really, really quality nines. But Bourdon Sansu is something incredibly special. Somebody who sees something that nobody else will see. She sees opportunities. She makes them when there is none. How pivotal is she to what they do? And could they cope without her?
Yeah, she reminds me of Faf de Klerk in the role she plays defensively, where it's like they just say, you just do whatever the hell you want. Like when she shoots out of the line, he was a nuisance for that in that World Cup. The two World Cups they won, they just let him run riot, and I feel they just give her that license and free will of do whatever you want, go make a nuisance of yourself, and then in attack she just switches it on. Like with the French men's team, you'd think, they have a backup plan. Like when she went off against us for the 10 minutes, the whole thing didn't fall apart. Like the wheels didn't come off the cart, they still kept playing. But she's definitely pivotal and she's a special player. And like they will want to keep her fit for the World Cup and keep her fit all the time because she just has these magic moments. She, like the drop goal, like who saw that coming in? It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. And what's funny is I was at a seconds game today and we had a goal line dropout. Our Bows team were playing and it was a goal line dropout and I was joking and I said, drop goal. And the Clonakilty player tried it and lads, it nearly went over. And I said, so now she's inspiring seconds teams and seconds divisions and all this to try drop goals out in Anacotty in Limerick. She doesn't even know the reach she's had. But I tell you, the 10 nearly knocked it over. I would have ran onto the pitch and celebrated with her if she did, even though it was against Star Gardens.
It's so unusual to see drop goals, though, in the women's game, even at the very, very top level. We see it so rarely. I think the last time we saw it in the Six Nations was 11 years ago. It's not something that you see French players or any player backing themselves to do. But of course, it would be Bourlan Sansu. That woman must have the most rock hard confidence of anybody to just go, give it a lash. Of course it flies over. She's an absolute phenomenal player. So if we look at the final scoreline, France versus Scotland, 38-17, do you think that was a good representation of the game? Or does it flatter Scotland a little bit?
I think maybe about 10 points. I would have thought France were maybe worth 10 points more. But you have to give it to Scotland for sticking in it and staying resilient. It wasn't easy to do. But yeah, I thought it flattered them a little bit. But then again, if France don't take their chances, they don't take their chances that other tries they had. So you can't say it flatters them or they're worth more because you're only worth what you put out in the scoreboard at the end of the day. So yeah, it was still a good game, and it was some incredible individual pieces of skill as well from both sides. But I think France are going to continue to grow and Scotland equally will also. They're going to target our games and our game and the Italy game. I'm sure they'll be up for those. But I reckon they probably thought after the big win against Wales that they'd be a lot closer and in recent years against France, but unfortunately they just didn't.
Quick question for you. Who is the most underrated player you've ever played with or against?
Oh,
put you on the spot.
Yeah, really put me on the spot. Currently, I think the most underrated player is, and I'm going to be biased here, is Ailbhe Corey for you Ailbhes. I think she is one of the best fullbacks in the country. Her only downfall is she's not a kicking fullback. And this is what's keeping her out, I think. But when I look back at that AIL final against Railway in the Aviva, it was one of the best performances. Like Chisholm got all the glory, right, for the tries and everything, and Cage for putting it on a plate for her. But in attack and defence, Ailbhe Corey was incredible. And she has been all season for us. And for Munster as well, she's always put in big performances. She's actually up in camp now. So it's been great to see her recognised. I think, unfortunately, because she's not a kicking fullback, she's just not going to get a look in for now. But that's a part of her game. Look, she's only 23, 24. I think she'll develop as she goes. But yeah, for me, I think, now we say she's underrated. We highly rate her, we rave about her. And in Munster we do as well. And I think she's incredible. But yeah, playing with, I think she's underrated. Underrated playing against, Niamh Byrne for Railway. I think she's, I felt like she got her first cap over in the 2022 Six Nations against England when Emer got hurt, she came off the bench and she was thrown onto the wing, I think. And I don't know if she ever played again after that. But I just thought she was thrown into the real deep end that day. It was, it was quite rough on her, but she's a railway stalwart. She's incredible in the breakdown. She's a real defensive leader, and obviously she's led them to a lot of AILs. I think she's quite underrated as a player in the league. I think she's one of the best players in the league. She's
been captain of the railway side for years now.
Yeah, for about 6 years, I'd say, and she leads them really, really well. And she's just an all-around really sound person as well, which always adds a bonus. So she's dead on, and like that, I just thought the year she got her first cap, against England, thrown in, over in Welford Road. It was she just got thrown in the deep end, and it was never set up for her to do well, I don't think, and it was great she got the cap, but at the same time, I know she definitely was probably worth her weight in more caps, I do think.
So looking ahead to next week and the English game, it's obviously the biggest game that we're going to play. It's the one that would probably bring on the most nerves, particularly, we're at home down in Musgrave Park. How are the players going to psychologically prepare for a game like that? They've 2 weeks now, break week, time to kind of gather and focus themselves, a rest time. But, I mean, there has to be some big nerves going into playing, the best team in the world. How do they prepare?
Yeah, I just think the opposite. I think there's no need to be nervous. I just think no one expects us to win this game. Now, again, in camp, they might think differently, but I think the outside noise is no one expects us to win. And I think that's the message they go in with, is no one thinks we will win this game. So I think they'll have a chip on their shoulder of, let's show everyone why we can win this game. So yes, there might be nerves from younger players, like Ruth Campbell. Obviously it's going to be her first time playing England. Anna McGann as well. So, there will be a couple of performances from some people who will not have played against them. But I think the France game might have set it up of, this is what it's going to be like for 80 minutes. It's going to be that line speed, that running into walls, running into brick walls. That's what it's going to be like. I do think it's coming at a good time where we have the week off, because there will be sore bodies, even though we spent a lot of time scoring tries today. We defended a lot as well. They had more of the ball than we had today, which was a surprising statistic to me. And they had more territory than we had as well. So I think the girls just have to go and play with smiles on their faces. There's nothing to lose. I think we played for a performance, not for a score against England at the moment. And they'll pick out opportunities and they'll pick out things we can work on, and we'll pick out times when we defend really well, and we'll take solace from those. And then we move on to the next one. But I wouldn't be nervous about it. I think, it's Cork has become, kind of a nice home, the same as the Kingspan for that Irish side. I played down there once when we played Italy, and we got incredible support down there. Again, obviously Munster bias, it's a great place to go. But I think the girls will be excited to be at home down there, and it's they've already sold out one of the stands. There's only tickets left for the terraces, so hopefully they can fill it out and just have a great day out of rugby. But we've absolutely nothing to lose, and as I said, we're brick by brick getting better every single game. So why not? And I think that's the attitude they'll have, is why not believe we can beat England? Nobody thought we'd beat New Zealand, and they did. So and again, I hope they prove me wrong. So that would be great. I'd love to sit here in 2 weeks and hold my hands up and say that I was wrong and the girls went and they did the unthinkable again. It would be incredible. So that's the attitude they need to go in with.
It's the hope that kills you sometimes, isn't it?
It
is. So lastly, just looking ahead to the starting 15 for next week, we made some big changes, 3 changes coming into the Italy game. Wall, Hogan and Lane all lost out. Do you think there's going to be any major change to the starting lineup? Do you think, like you mentioned earlier, Wall and Hogan off the bench were absolutely incredible? Do you think they're pushing for that starting jersey? Who would you like to see?
Yeah, it's, that impact was fantastic today in a game where the Italians were tired after 60 minutes and we got to bring the girls on. I think we're going to need that physicality from minute one. So I think Darrow will get back in, and I think Fiona will drop to the bench just from that physicality, energy standpoint. Unfortunately for Brittany, I think Tricky will still start. because of that defensive effort. And I think we understand that we're going to need that against England. But I think Erin King and Aoife Wafer will hold their places. So I think Brittany might find herself on the bench again. Now, unless they just change it all together and, like, you know, they took Aoife Wafer off her early. I had heard maybe she was carrying an injury. Yesterday I'd heard that. So if that's the case, then do they just say, right, we start Brittany and give her the week off and see, because we know how crucial she's going to be in the rest of the games? Or maybe today they just said, with the injury, we'll take you off for 20 minutes to go because this game is wrapped up and tied and she's actually fine. You know, it could have been that as well. But I do think I would start Darrow. I think we're going to need that grittiness from Tricky. So I think she'll hold her spot. And I think, unfortunately, really unfortunately for Brittany, she'll find herself on the bench again. But I'd keep Ailbhe at 9. I think she did really, really well. Emily Lane did well when she came on, but I thought Ailbhe was the difference today with the speed of ball. I thought it was super.
Yeah, I think Ailbhe does a really good job at just controlling the tempo of a game. She's very calm on the ball. I think you're right. I think Chute is probably not going to start the weekend. I think she did absolutely nothing wrong today. But Wall just is that powerhouse of a player. I think Wall's game has come on hugely since she went over to England as well with Chiefs. She's absolutely performing out of her skin. Chloe, coming into the game in 2 weeks' time, what would you consider a success from Ireland? Is it getting to within a certain amount of points? Is it seeing a cohesive defensive game from us? Is it managing pressure really well? What's success to you?
I think, as I said, I think we can't worry about the scoreboard, right? I think we need to take every play by play. For me, success would be us still performing for 80 minutes. What would worry me would be something that would happen like Wales, where we said, you know, they got so tired and then the dam just opened and England scored 67 points. And that's kind of what happened to us last year, you know, and they put 88 on us. Like, I think we're a much better side than that now. I don't anticipate that happening. So I wouldn't, like, for me, I wouldn't be concerned about the scoreboard. I just think it has to be that complete performance and having those big defensive stop-outs for, you know, it is going to be longer periods of time. Like, they probably will hold on to the ball a lot more than Italy did today. But I think we are a different team than when we played England last year. We're much more confident. We have, like, grown so much in the last year. We're like two different teams than we were, like, and a lot of the players are the same. You know, obviously we didn't have all the sevens, but there is a lot of players the same that are in there. So for me, I don't want to say, oh, you know, a success story would be 30 points, because I don't think so, because you can lose games by 30 points and not feel like that, and it should have been 50 or could have been 60, you know. So I think for me, it just has to be about that performance and trying to play for 80 minutes. And I think if we do that, like, then the scoreboard will look after itself. But yeah, like, I think just live and enjoy it, that we now want to be considered one of the best teams in the world. You know, we're going up to fifth in the rankings. So when you get to play these teams, these top teams, you have to relish it and you have to want to live in it, because that's the only way you're going to get better. There's a reason France play England in warm-up games. It's because they know they have to play them to stay relevant and stay in that tier 1 nation category. You know, iron sharpens iron, right? So we have to now want to be a team who wants to play England, the best team in the world, who wants to play New Zealand on more consistent basis. You know, like, we laughed that we're 2-1 against New Zealand. We played them 3 times. Now let's be a team who plays them every year, because that's what's going to ultimately make us better. So yeah, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to show how far we've come, but also then to kind of show us this is where we still need to go.
Yeah, I think in past years it's probably been a matter of surviving the game against England, coming out with as few injuries as possible. But I think going in, there's probably going to be, you know, that opportunity, like you said, to prove ourselves, to play our game, you know, show that our mentality is where it needs to be, even when we're under the cosh, even when the pressure's on. I think it's going to be an exciting game. So 2 weeks' time, Musgrave Park, like you said, tickets are flying out the door. Please get down, get bums in seats, legs in stands, and roar on this Irish side. I think, for me, the best atmosphere you'll ever find is one of those big games against England when the place is packed out. And I think we're going to really, really roar them on. So, Chloe, thanks again for coming in and sharing your rugby insights with us. Please be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what you hear, please rate the podcast also. From me and Cian, thanks for listening and keep on rucking.